So everybody lights the candles inside. So the question is, why do we light the candles inside? Because if you look at source number 1, the Gemara, where in Shabbos, where it talks about the mitzvah of Chanukah, Sutanu Rabbana Ner Chanukah mitzvah lahanicha al Pesach beiso mibachut. So it's a mitzvah to place the Chanukah on the outside, right? Pesach on the entrance of the house, mibachut, on the outside of the house. And im hayadar ba'aliyah. So if you live in the aliyah is the attic, or let's say a second floor, which we'll see explained later on. What that means is pretty much you live in an area where you don't really have an area outside to place your ner Chanukah. You don't have an area of your own. So then what do you do? So in such a case, manicha b'chalon hasmucha l'rshus harabim. In such a case, then you put it seemingly next to the window in the house, which would face the public domain. And that's the second case. And then uvishasa sakana, in the case where there is danger, seemingly. So we'll see what that means. Manichal shulchan ovidayo. So in such a case, you don't even have to put it near the window of the house. You just put it on your kitchen table, let's say, or another one of the tables in your house, and that suffices you fulfill the mitzvah. So what is behind all this? So Rashi in source number 2 just explains mibachutz. Why do we want to place the Chanukah candle outside? Because what's the whole idea of lighting Chanukah candles? Mishum pirsumei nisa. The whole idea is we're trying to publicize the miracle. How do you publicize the miracle? By showing everybody what you're doing. So you can show more people if you're lighting it on the outside of your house as opposed to lighting it in the inside. And then Rashi here just comments. I'm not going to deal with Rashi now because what the question that some of the Rishonim deal with the Gemara is, in those days many people lived in what they called a chatzer, some form of a courtyard, and the question was, where would you light this Chanukah candles? Looking like facing to the courtyard, or lighting at the entrance of the chatzer, so to face everybody out. So when I was in Israel, so when I was in Gross, so it was obviously there's a machlokas where to light candles. Where yeshiva guys light candles is always a machlokas, and people always, I've never seen a yeshiva where everyone does the same thing. Maybe in Gush we all did, but people light in the lunchroom, people light in their dorm room, people light everywhere. So in Gross, what they have is that you have a section where you have all these apartment buildings. So some people light inside their apartment buildings, but some people treat that whole area as a chatzer, and then so most of us would actually light at the top of the stairs going down to the apartment buildings, because we treat the whole area as a chatzer, and you light at the outside of the chatzer so it's always an argument where to light, and that complicates a little bit here. But the idea is that you want to light candles b'shum pirsumei nisa. You're trying to publicize the miracle. You're trying to show to probably as many people as possible. So that would help us understand why you want to light it outside. Now, obviously, the other two cases, there were 3 cases in the Gemara. So the normal case is you should light outside. The other case was if you live in a place, dar ba'aliyah, which means that you don't really have access to an area to light outside, to public domain. So then you have to light inside, but you try to show it to the public. You try to publicize it by putting it near the window. And then in Shasa Sakana, in times of danger, see what exactly that means, you just place it inside your house. Obviously you don't have to endanger yourself in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah. So how does Rashi explain this case of Sakana? So Rashi explains Shayalahem lefarsim chok biyom edam. So there was the Parsim, I guess is dealing with the Persians here, that they had some sort of law on their holidays. There's some sort of holiday they had. I don't know if this is I don't know what are the origins of Christmas. I don't know when they started. I don't think it's dealing with that. I think they had another type of holiday where they only allowed the fires at that time, candles to be lit inside their temples and not anywhere else. So if you had a candle lit in a Jewish house or outside a Jewish house, so that would be dangerous because you were only allowed to have these candles lit inside of their temples of idol worship. So therefore, in such a case, you would light inside your house, and that would be sufficient. So we see here that there is precedent to light inside, but in one of 2 cases. In case of dar ba'aliyah, you don't have access to anywhere, you have nowhere to light outside, you don't own anything to light outside. Or shas hasakana. So if I'd ask anyone here if any of those apply to most cases, so the answer is probably in Toronto. I don't think it's the shas hasakana. Yeah. right? And what would be interesting just to think about later on is that, in terms of doing things inside, right? I would think a mitzvah that we fulfill, which is probably even more pronounced outside, well, depending where you live, could be sukkah. Most people probably have in their backyards, but if you go to, let's say, like Bathurst Lawrence, so there people have on their, right, people have on their driveways. I've seen like people, not so much in Thornhill probably, but going more south, you see sukkahs, as you know, so you see, it's not like we don't fulfill any mitzvahs outside in a public manner nowadays, so why is it for Chanukah that we don't light outside? Why is it that we light inside? And this isn't a new question of the 21st or the 20th century. This is already a question that was asked in the 11th, 12th, and I think 13th century in the next two sources. Next two sources we have the Or Zarua and the Sefer HaItter, who are both Rishonim, I think both living in Ashkenaz, in different areas there. And again, I think they're living in the 12th and the 13th century. So the Or Zarua is going to explain our whole case. I'll just read it through. He's pretty much going to explain the Gemara, just incorporating Rashi's interpretation. So it's a mitzvah to put it on the outside of the house because we want to publicize the miracle. You don't put it in the Rosh Hashanah, you put it in the Chatzer, Shebateim hayu psuchim lechatzer, because their houses used to open up to these courtyards. Okay. V'mayadar ba'aliyah, if you lived on, again, second level, she'ein lo makom bechatzer lahanicha hasham, because in such a case where you don't have access, you don't own anything, you have nowhere to light outside where it would be noticeably yours. So manicha mivifnim keneged achalon, you put it in the inside next to the window. Uvishas, which is probably what most people here do nowadays, you put it in the inside of your house, but probably towards a window.
Unless you're so far up high.
Okay, then you're right. Apartment buildings are another question. But even so, some people will put it near a window, depending how far up you live, and if you live near any other apartment buildings also. That's a separate issue. And again, in the third case where it was sakana manicha shulchana v'dayo. Okay, then here he just quotes a continuation of the Gemara. This is just the source of a shamus, right? That we need another candle, so you don't make sure not to use the light of the Chanukah candles. Right now, nowadays, this is probably most people's houses. If you have a torch there, so then that is your other light. So you don't need to have a shamus if you have a torch, because then the light you're benefiting from is from the torch. So now that we have electricity, you probably don't. Shamus is a bit superfluous because you just turn on a light in the room, and then that you would use that light, and that would be enough. But people like to have it either way. V'ika adam chashuv. If you're an important person, so I think important people probably would be demeaning them to use the medura. Apagavdika medura tzarech nami neracher. Okay. Another interpretation of what shas sakana means is that there was a specific decree to not fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah. So unlike the other one where it wasn't necessarily against Chanukah, it was just you couldn't have any candles really in the house. So another way to interpret it, Shas Sakana, is that there's a specific decree. I guess the non-Jews didn't want the Jews fulfilling the mitzvah of Chanukah. So again, in that case, you can light inside. V'ha'idna deleika sakana, and here's the punchline. Then nowadays in the 12th century, deleika sakana, where it wasn't dangerous. Again, that could have fluctuated very quickly, especially in medieval ages, where it was dangerous and at what times. But the leika sakana lo yadana my time inanu madligim b'chaseros. He says, I have no idea. I'm stumped. I have no idea why we don't light outside. It's not dangerous where I'm living. Again, I don't remember exactly where the Or Zarua lived. It's not dangerous where we're living. If you look at the Gemara, the mitzvah is clearly to light outside. I really have no idea why we light inside. So the Sefer HaItter is another Rishon asks the same question, and he gives a bit of a cryptic answer. And Tanu Rabbanan, Ner Chanukah mitzvah lahanicho al Pesach beso mibachutz. Again, v'im hayadar ba'aliyah manicho b'chalon aspuch l'reshus harabim v'shas sakana manicho shulchana v'dayo. And now he just writes v'achar shenagu al hasakana nagu. He says, and nowadays, seemingly after everybody followed the custom to light outside, so kind of Inside, thank you. Now that people had the custom to light inside because of sakana, so even though that there's no sakana now, nagu, it's kind of like we're just going to keep that minhag going. But then he writes, Umisha yachol anicho mibachutz, manicha bibachutz, imlav al pisco. But if you're able to put it outside, then you should put it outside. So it's a bit unclear what he's trying to say, but he too seems to be bothered by this issue, and he seems to maybe suggest that maybe once the minhag came, achar shenag, once people started doing it inside, so then status quo, even when it wasn't dangerous anymore, so the minhag still continued. But taking this, so again, according to what we've seen so far, the heter, you could say, the reason why to light outside would be shas sakana, would be there's some sort of danger to light outside. In such a case, you don't have to put yourself in danger to light Chanukah candles. You're allowed to light inside. And why that applies, does that svara still apply nowadays? Seemingly it shouldn't, because it's hard to, in most places in the world, it's hard to say that's shas sakana. I forget who I saw a source who said that now, even though many places it's not shas sakana, but since some places in the world it still is sakana, so we don't want some people to start lighting outside, then everybody will. They'll put themselves in danger, so better not to light outside. But basing it solely on shasa sakana, there wouldn't be much reason to light outside. Again, except you follow the iter, it pretty much just says almost status quo. Once they moved it inside, then that kind of just became what everybody did. So that would be one reason to maybe why we light inside. The second one, this is going back to one of the first years I gave probably in the shul, when we were doing the introduction. Were you I think you were at that series. When we did an introduction to the Wednesday night Beit Midrash series, the introduction to different books. So were you at that one also? Okay. So what I did there, one of the Sfarim we talked about was the Aruch HaShulchan. So I used this source actually in source number 6 to talk about the Aruch HaShulchan a little bit. But source number 5 here, there might be another reason why we light inside, and this we could relate to, although this year has been decently nice outside.
Right.
And that is the weather outside. Maybe the weather has forced us to move the mitzvah back inside. So the Ritva writes, the Ritva is one of the commentaries in the Rishonim. He's living in Sfarad in the medieval era, probably the 13th century. And he writes as follows, and he's going to base it on what the interpretation of shasa sakana means, what it means to be dangerous, and then expand upon that. So he writes again, he's commenting on the Gemara, B'shasa sakana manicha al shulchano. Perush, lo sof davar sakanas nefashos. What does sakana mean? Sakana cannot mean that it's, by lighting outside you're putting your life in danger. Why can't it mean that? Because it's obvious then. The Gemara doesn't have to tell us that, if you have your choice between dying or lighting Chanukah candles, you should light inside to prevent yourself from dying. That's obvious. That's one of the basic principles we have in terms of the way we fulfill mitzvahs. That we always have b'chai b'hem, that we always do. It's always better to, let's say, it's generally violate an avera as opposed to die, as opposed to the 3 specific averos. But in such a case, we never have to fulfill a mitzvah's aseh if it's going to put your life in danger. So that can't be what it means. It can't mean that you're actually going, you're putting your life in danger. As he writes in other places. So what does it mean? So even if it's some sort of tsar, pain, or will cause some sort of eva, which is enmity among your enemies, so it's not that they'll actually go and kill you, but maybe just if it will make it almost uncomfortable, and maybe they'll harass you a little bit.
That's interesting. We're talking about sarfat.
Yes.
We went ahead and did it anyways. Yeah.
Okay, but that's that's a bit of a separate issue, but. So in such a case, so that's how he's going to explain shas sakana. It doesn't mean really putting your life in danger. He's bumping it down a notch. What it means is sakana tsar or eva is going to, again, maybe they'll harass you a little bit, but certainly not anything life-threatening. B'lachen perush Rashi kan da'hainu mipnei parsim shelo hayu manichim adik ner b'shum bayis b'yom yadua shel edam. Therefore, he says that's why Rashi explains it as he does. I don't know why that Rashi's interpretation fits sakanas tsar as opposed to sakanas tefashos, but okay. And then he writes, Ulefichach, but based on all this, he continues, Haya Omer Mori Harab, Shekeshenoshev Ruach, when it's very windy outside, She'efshar Lahadlika Bachutz, Madlika Bifnim Beveso. So he was probably living in Spain, so I don't think they get snow there, but he's talking about Shenoshev Ruach. He says, because what are we talking about? We're not talking about such a sakana where it's really putting your life in danger. We're talking about something which isn't as severe. We're saying if you have a choice to be harassed and light outside or to light, nicely and quietly inside. So we're saying better to light inside. If it's going to be almost more comfortable for you to light inside, so you should light inside. So based on that, he says, therefore, if it's windy outside and it's unpleasant to light Chanukah candles, if it's windy outside, unpleasant to light Chanukah candles outside. So too, in such a case, you can light inside because, again, we don't need such a high threshold in order to allow us to light inside. So even if it's windy, we can light inside as well. And in source number 6, the Aruch HaShulchan, who's writing, again, towards the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. So here, he's going to deal with weather that we're more familiar with because he was living in Poland and maybe somewhere else, I don't remember. V'hinei ata, he writes, nowadays, ein anu madlikim bachutz. He says, nowadays we don't light candles outside. V'af she'ein sakana etzleinu. Here too he's saying where he lived there was no oppression, there was no sakana. Mikol makom kim'atu mehanimnaos. Why? Mipnei shebechol hamedinos shelanu, in pretty much everywhere where we live, Yemei Chanukah hem yemei sagrir geshem v'sheleg v'ruchos chazakim. Where do we live? It's raining, it's snowing, it's windy, it's not pleasant outside. V'efshar lanicham bachutz im lo l'haskiram b'schuchis. The only way to keep them outside would be to put them in a glass container. So if you go to Israel, that's what everybody does, and they light outside. However, he says, but that's too much effort. The rabbis never said you had to go and build yourself a glass case just so you can put your Hanukkah candles, just so you can light outside. That's too difficult. Now he writes, this other one is, I don't understand. Since if you light outside, it won't be a heker l'mitzvah. People won't understand you're doing it for a mitzvah. I don't know why not. Maybe certainly now everybody would recognize you're doing it as a mitzvah, so I wouldn't apply that far nowadays. He says, he says, and furthermore, not every place would actually allow you to do this. Maybe there were some places where it was sakana. And therefore, because that's the case, we all light inside. And then he continues, and that almost changes the whole mitzvah, because once you start lighting inside, it changes the focus, right? When you light outside, so you're lighting for the public. When you light inside, you're lighting for the house. And that actually changes, if you look in the Ramah, the Shulchan Aruch, that changes several of the halachos. The Gemara itself writes that when you light Hanukkah candles, you light candles pretty much from nightfall until nobody's outside anymore. But now if you're lighting inside, you don't care, right? So it could be based on the principles of the Gemara. If you really came home at 10 o'clock nowadays and nobody's outside, now you could still say people are outside, but if nobody was outside, if you come out 1 in the morning and nobody's outside, so you wouldn't light. You wouldn't make maybe you would. You certainly wouldn't make a bracha on such a lighting because you're not really fulfilling the mitzvah if you're lighting for the outside. But now when we light inside and it's pretty much focused on whoever's in the house, so then that gives you more way to light when nobody's really up. Our people say, let's say you come at 1 in the morning and nobody's up, just you're up. So some people would say you should wake up. I think the Mishnah says you should wake up somebody at least in your house. I'm sure they would love that just so you could fulfill the mitzvah. Others would say, I've seen other people just say light without a light with a bracha, and you're okay even if nobody else is there. So it changes. Once we change it from outside to inside, it really changes. It changes where we're placing the chanuka, but also changing almost the focus of the mitzvah, and will therefore have practical ramifications in that area as well. So therefore he writes here, now that we're inward focused, opposed to outward, where one of the Gemara also talks about this idea of trying to light right near the entrance of your house on the left side. Why? Because the mezuzah is on the right side of your house and the chanuka is on the left side of the house, and you want to be surrounded entirely by mitzvahs. So he says, but now when you're lighting inside, you don't have to be so concerned about lighting right near the entrance of the house. But the minhag is to try to light there, Ve'in l'shanos, and you shouldn't change that. O shemadlikim besocha pesach al hamashkof hasmali. It says, or you light inside the entrance on the left side of the door. I guess that would all depend on what the houses look like. It says, now if you let you have many people, let's you have many people in the house, everybody wants to fill the mitzvah themselves. Because if everybody lights in one area right in the tefach next to it, so then you won't be able to determine, you lose the purpose of the mitzvah of mahadrin to show how many days of Chanukah it is. Because if everybody's lighting and you can only make out just one big flame, it doesn't help anything. He says, therefore it would actually be better that everybody lights in a different window almost to fulfill the mitzvah. And then he concludes at the end here, I'm not going to read it, but pretty much what he concludes at the end, that the best, which is I think what most people, especially living in houses nowadays, what they can do, the best to fulfill the mitzvah is to light it inside, but you try to light it outside next to a window, so you can almost get the best of both worlds. That you're really lighting it again for the people inside, but if you light it by the window facing outside, kind of like the case of Im Hayadar Ba'aliyah, then in that case as well, people from the outside will see it as well. So that's another factor which could lead to why we light inside. Could be bad weather, but again, so that we can relate to that in Toronto. I don't know if you live in Houston or Florida, if such a thing would relate there as well. So just to see just one or two other ideas, in source number 7 here, the Minchas Yitzchak. Minchas Yitzchak, we've quoted him a few times, is Rav Weiss, lived in England and then in Israel also. So he writes, so I think he's talking about, he's talking about, so here's what he writes. I just picked this up in the middle of his tshuva here. He says, I haven't seen even the tzadikei hador, even the righteous ones, even the gedolim, whoever it was, living in chutz la'aretz, nobody actually lights outside. He says, even the people living in Israel, there's only a minority of people who actually light outside their houses. So especially the Hasidim, I guess I didn't know this, follow the pathways of the Baal Shem Tov, so certainly they all light inside. I'm curious, I have no idea what the statistics are. People who light in Israel, what percentage light inside, what percentage light outside. I'm sure it probably depends on certain things, certainly where you live and location, and also if you live in an apartment building, which maybe, so that will obviously factor into it. But he says even a lot of people in Israel don't actually light it outside. And he says, so he quotes, I don't know who this is, he quotes what he saw written in the Tshuvas Imrei Noam. Shehik Shelo HaShoel, the person in that Tshuva asked the Imrei Noam, Almin Hagenu Lahalik Bifnim Af B'Deleka Sakana. He was bothered, well, how come we can light outside nowadays when there's no sakana? Veheshiv Lo B'Zeh HaLashon. And he answered as follows. It's a good question. I don't know why we light inside. It was Shas Sakana. Achanochi Matzasi Mekor Lazeh B'Meseches Megillas Tainis Sham. I found a source in Megillas Tainis. There are actually two books or ancient scrolls which are called Megillas Tainis, and they are exactly opposite. What does that mean? One, what does Megillas Tainis mean? So it means the Megillah, the scroll of fast days. So the more famous one, which we're familiar with from Chanukah, is it tells you all the days where you're not allowed to fast. So, even though it's called Megillas Tainis, it tells you all the days where you're not allowed to fast. So in that Megillah, you have Chanukah and Purim, and the Gemara talks about it, that everything else in that Megillah is batel, right? There are about 35 days in that Megillah where you're not allowed to fast, and there'll be holidays. So everything in there is batel except Chanukah and Purim. I think that confused matters. There's another Megillas Tainis, which is days where you have to fast. But the more common one is where you don't have to fast. you're not allowed to fast actually. So in there, in Masechet Megillas Tainis, it writes as follows: Mitzvah lahanicha al Pesach mi beis mi bachutz. He's talking about the mitzvah to fulfill the Chanukah. So it's a mitzvah to place it outside. The misyare min haleitzim manicha al Pesach beso mi bifnim. It's similar to what the Ritva explains. In Megillas Tainis it says, but if you're scared from the leitzim, so manicha al Pesach beso mi bifnim. So here he's almost adding a third one. It's not Shasa Sakana, because Shasa Sakana is its own category. And he's kind of leaving out, or maybe he's just skipping it here in terms of the Darba Aliyah. But he's adding in another case, so that seems to be somewhat similar to how the Ritva is explaining Shasa Sakana, but it's almost if you're scared of people who are late, or I don't know if it's I don't want to say lazy, but it would be more, exactly, those people. So he says, V'hinei achshav bizman hazeh lo havi shas sakana chalila. He says, nowadays it's certainly not shas sakana, rak mikri sherabu aleitim, but nowadays we have a lot of, you could say, bombs or whatever it is. So madlikim bifnim eitz al pesach. So that's another reason why we might light inside. So it's almost a combination of factors that seem to be playing in. It's this idea of shas sakana, that's probably where the minhag started. Then you have this idea of bad weather, and then you combine that with another reason of probably it's more comfortable and it's nicer and it's more enjoyable and you're not putting yourself out there as much if you light it inside as opposed to going outside and doing it there. So let's just see two other things. The Igros Moshe here in source number 8, the Rav Moshe Feinstein, he's dealing with a bit of a separate issue because he's dealing with the same question of lighting inside. He says, I'll just read it for a little bit. Bedavar hadlaka saneros bechanuka shemidina bigmar zarech lahadlik bepesach habayis or bepesach hachatzer. You're supposed to light the entrance of the house or the entrance of the courtyard mi bachutz, on the outside. The Harama Kasa b'siman Tavrish Ayin Aleph Sitzayin. The Rama writes, "Shebizman hazeh shekulanu madligim bifnim." Now that we all light inside, ein lachush kolkach. So kevan de ein heker near Rishus Harabim klal. So now where we light inside, we don't have to be concerned about lighting near the entrance of the house. Mikol makom. Haminag samuch lepesach kamo b'meihem. That the minhag is to light near the entrance as they did back when they lit outside. And then he writes that it can't actually mean minhag because then we'd have to follow it. He just means that's what people try to do. And then he goes on, and pretty much what Rav Moshe Feinstein is saying is that now that we light inside, the Gemara talks about all these other principles. That you should try to light the Chanukah candles on the left side. You try to surround the house. You try to light as near the entrance as possible. And Rav Moshe Feinstein pretty much says, those are nice, and if you could do that, you can. But really, the most important thing is that aspect of Pirsumei Nisa. None of these other ideas of lighting on the left side or lighting it near the entrance are really going to factor in as much as Pirsumei Nisa. So and therefore I think what he says is really what the minhag of most people is that people generally light it on the inside, but try to light it near the entrance where most people will see it, because that's the most important factor. The most important factor of the mitzvah, which is really the whole essence of the mitzvah, is Pirsumei Nisa. So that comes number one. So the way where you'll get the most Pirsumei Nisa is where you should light the candle. If you can then do it right next to the entrance and on the left side, so then that's great also. But those are only secondary and those are tertiary factors. Those are certainly not going to be the primary factors. And that's what you go through this tshuva here. Now that we light inside, do it in a way where we're lighting it Pirsumei Nisa for inside, but light in a way where also you'll be able to show it to the outside world as well. What I brought here in source number 9 is just going back to lighting outside. So I mentioned that if you light outside, which is pretty much only in Israel, so most people now will light in a sort of, and you probably are even required to light in a glass box. Why? Because you have to light the Chanukah candles in a place where it'll be able to stay lit. If you don't light it in a place where it can feasibly stay lit for, let's say, 30 minutes, then you don't fulfill the mitzvah. So if you light candles outside, unless there's no wind outside, there's a good chance they're going to go out. So you have to do it in a way, you have to really put in a box in order to allow you to fulfill the mitzvah. So some people, which is an interesting, were not happy with that practice I forget who exactly it was, and that's what I'll see in source number 9. And they actually said you cannot fulfill your mitzvah lighting outside in a box. Why? Because even though the point of the box is to block the wind, when you're lighting, at the moment where you're actually lighting the Chanukah candles, so the box has to be open, or else how are you getting to the Chanukah? So at that moment where you're lighting, since it's open, the potential for it to remain lit for the next half an hour, it won't allow you to fulfill the mitzvah. So even though you think the box is helping, the box actually isn't helping, because the only way to light it is to light it in a way where you have to open the box, and therefore at the moment you light it, it doesn't have the potential to stay lit for the entire duration, and therefore you don't fulfill the mitzvah. And therefore some people write that they had came up with a whole contraption where you will 2 doors almost, and you can open one. It's a bit crazy. So the Aznid Baru is Rav Zilber living in Israel. So he writes, Nachzor le'inyanenu av shelevasof nisbarer she'eno nichbeh zehu mishum dis sagar hadelas shel ha'ashashis. Right? Even though at the end of the day when you're lighting outside it doesn't go out, that's only because this door, this compartment you have is blocking it. V'havi kimosif ba shemen. And that seems to be similar to the case of, let's say you light the Chanukah candles and you only have enough oil where it stay lit for 10 minutes, and you light it. Then afterwards you pour more oil where it will allow it to stay lit for another extra hour. So you don't fulfill the mitzvah. Because we say for Chanukah candles, hadlaka osa mitzvah, that at the moment where you light it, that is the mitzvah. You can't do anything afterwards. So closing the door here is almost like adding more oil. That's giving you the potential to light it, to stay lit longer. And he says, therefore it should be a suffix, and you should, since, you're not sure if it's going to go out, so suffix brachos lahakel, it's better to light without bracha if you do that. That should probably be kava, I don't know if it's kacha. Kan, 1 second, sorry. She says, even if it stood and it didn't go up by the wind, I think it should be kava, even as long as it wasn't extinguished. You don't have to light it again. Kan yoser gara, here it's worse. And here it's even worse because in this case you're doing an action after by closing it, which is allowing you to fulfill the mitzvah. He says, Mikol makom nira delemaisa ein tzarich lahachmir b'zeh. He says, no, this is a chumrah we don't actually have to be concerned. Why? The kevan de soger hadeles tekefim hadlaka sanero, since the compartment is closing as you light the candles, have keosek b'maseh hadlaka kolzman v'lo have kemosif b'shemen la'achar hadlaka. It's not the same as taking the oil and pouring it in after you light it. This is pretty much all one action. You're lighting it and the door is pretty much closing right after. You don't view it as something which is happening afterwards. It's all really part of the Maisa Hadlaka, Veina Gara Mihidlik Bimakum Aruach Velokapsa Deshapir Dami, and pretty much says therefore you don't have to be concerned. So he pretty much argues on this premise, says you don't have to be so crazy and concerned that because it's open at that moment you don't fulfill the mitzvah. No, because it's really all one action. At the moment you're lighting it, it's pretty much closing, so it's all considered the Maisa Hadlaka, and you fulfill your mitzvah. So if you want to light outside with in Israel with your glass, you certainly should. So I would suggest and guess that it's really a combination. I would say that what we saw in the Itter is probably correct, and then you just combine the other factors why we don't light outside. Is that once they moved it inside for Shas Sakana, and then you have the weather factors, and you have all these other factors, are probably just easier and nicer to light it inside. There was probably never much of a push to move it back outside, and I would probably assume that let's say you want to light outside in Chutz La'aretz nowadays. Is that even appropriate? I don't know. Most people probably say it's not even appropriate, because now once you've almost fulfilled the mitzvah inside, I don't know if somebody should decide therefore to go ahead. If it's yuhara, if it's almost showing off, or once everyone else is doing it inside to do the same. But it's probably a combination of these factors, how we've moved the chanuka from outside to inside, and also mention how it will affect the way you fulfill the mitzvah in terms of when you're allowed to light it and where you should light it as well, because again it's almost changing the focus to the inside, presuming Nisa as opposed to outside, and we try to merge both to do it inside, but putting it at the entrance, do it outside as well. Okay.
I mentioned the apartment. We have nobody facing us. We're on the 18th floor.
Right. So that's right. Well, the Gemara says that you don't light Chanukah candles above 20 amos, which is 30 feet, which means if probably above the third story you don't light. But some people say nowadays, with their higher buildings, we don't, people are looking up, so you could see, and some people say, especially if you're, let's say, near other apartment buildings or there's an 18th floor that they could see it, so it'd be okay. But many people in such a case would just light,
With
just inside the apartment.
yeah, light inside the bracha, and therefore you don't. When I lived in an
With a
apartment,
bracha.
yeah, for sure. When I lived in an apartment, I lived on the 3rd floor, so unclear if I was above 20 amos or not. So what we did is we just lit. The apartment wasn't so big, but we lit. We tried to light near the window. So even though there weren't really other apartment buildings facing in there, but I think it worked for maybe it was under 20 amos. I'm not even sure. And then that way also, whatever, it worked for, I think it was Pirsu Manisa for us and for the outside as well. Some apartment buildings, again, depending, that wouldn't apply here. Maybe in Israel, maybe it would light
In the lobby.
yeah, in the lobby, because then you can treat the whole apartment building as a chatzer, and then you can light the entrance of the chatzer. So it gets, I would assume most people in apartment buildings light inside their apartment. Again, just because it's easier, but anyways. Okay, everybody have a great Hanukkah.